If you've at all been paying attention to the news or the media recently, you have probably come across the term quantum computing. As quantum computing becomes more mainstream, more and more people are, understandably, struggling to explain what quantum computers really are, how they work, and the fundamental concepts surrounding them. IBM Quantum is the world leader in quantum computing. We have the most sophisticated quantum program in the world, and lots of dedicated, free educational content so that you don't have to feel left in the dark about what's going on in the space. Today, I'm going to answer some of the most common but technologically advanced questions we get about quantum computers. Let's get started. Number 1. To use the quantum computer, do you need to build your own software and programs from the ground up? Not at all. IBM and other companies have created built-in classes, functions, and add-ons to help get you started much more quickly. But if you prefer to have that level of control, you can alter these functions and, of course, create your own. Number 2. What does quantum utility actually mean? And is utility the same thing as advantage? No, they are different. Let's start with quantum advantage. Quantum advantage is achieved when a quantum computer is the best possible choice for completing a computational task. It can solve it faster, more efficiently, or more cost-effectively, or by any other metric. Quantum utility is not as strong a claim. Quantum utility means that the quantum computer can run certain calculations more efficiently than a brute force classical computation. Brute force computing means that the classical computer is more or less exactly calculating the mathematics required to run the problem. It's highly inefficient, but sometimes there's no better option. Now, there are all sorts of classical methods beyond brute force parallel computation. But at the bleeding edge of computation, you often don't know what the right answer looks like. There's some degree of uncertainty in all of these calculated solutions. And they don't always agree with one another either. However, when you have achieved quantum utility, it means you can calculate solutions that fall within the range of the other possible solutions. And so using a quantum computer is a legitimate way to compute a solution, and it can be a useful comparative marker. But that doesn't mean it's the ultimate fastest or more efficient method. Number 3. Do we need room temperature superconductors in order to scale today's quantum computers? Nah, we don't need this. There are actually many superconductors with a much higher critical temperature, the temperature at which they become superconducting, than the ones that are used in quantum computing. We don't use these because they have a variety of other effects and properties that aren't suitable for us. Higher temp superconductors fit in this category. In addition, we operate the devices at much colder temperatures than even the critical temperature of the superconductor, because we need to remove all thermal noise and stray energy that would disrupt or even destroy the quantum states containing the information. There could be other technologies or ways to scale in the future, but high-temperature superconductors are not considered important elements. Number 4. How do we handle quantum errors? Today's quantum computers use a combination of techniques to deal with noise at different stages of the computation. At the most basic level, we use techniques that transform a circuit during compilation to minimize errors. These might include introducing gates while a qubit is sitting idle, so it doesn't have time to decohere. We can also employ techniques that occur in the post-processing stage. Typically, this starts with pre-processing overhead related to model training to understand noise in the system, and classical post-processing overhead to mitigate errors in the raw results by using the generated model. In exchange for this overhead, though, we're able to get much more accurate results. However, a large-scale fault-tolerant quantum computer will require techniques that detect errors while an algorithm is running and correct for them in real time. We do this by encoding the information of one, what we call a logical qubit, across multiple physical qubits. The basic idea is that the information will be stored more reliably, as we use redundant physical qubits to represent a single logical qubit. The downside of this is that a large overhead is needed, since you need more physical qubits on the chip. Although, IBM has recently developed and published a code that reduced the overhead by 90%. We also require components that can apply quantum gates on encoded qubits, and all of these components must be scalable. There's been a lot of good work experimenting with these techniques, but a lot more work is needed. Once we've demonstrated this, however, we will have achieved what we refer to as quantum computing that is fault tolerant, that it can calculate accurately even in the presence of errors. Question 5. Are experts only interested in exponential speedups, like we see from Shor's algorithm? While exponential speedups are most compelling to experts, quantum heuristics hold enormous potential, even without a rigorously proven speedup. A heuristic is a pragmatic approach to solving a problem that isn't necessarily guaranteed to be optimal or even always correct, yet still proves useful in practice. In fact, classical computing already relies on powerful heuristics. Large language models, for instance, use heuristic techniques rather than strictly optimal algorithms. And this suggests that similar approaches in quantum computing could be extremely valuable. Moreover, in the long term, even polynomial speedups could contribute to quantum advantage, expanding the range of problems where quantum methods provide meaningful benefits. And there you have it. That concludes our 3-episode series where we answer the most common quantum computing questions that we often see. If I didn't answer your question, go back and check out the other 2 videos. And if we still didn't answer your question, please drop it in the comments below. We'll see you next time.